Brianna Wu finally admitted that she's a trans woman, which is great because it means that a lot of her comments come across more like internalized misogyny as opposed to, sorry, internalized transphobia, not internalized misogyny, as opposed to just a cis woman who's hating on trans people. Although I will, yeah, she does have a lot of internalized trans misogyny because a lot of her, I feel like I don't talk about Brianna Wu that much because, first of all, she is not hugely relevant, but also because the things that she usually complains about are trans woman issues. You know, she's messy. She talks about trans women being you're not very attractive. You need to work on that. You keep acting like a freak. You need to stop doing that. You know, a lot of her commentary is very specifically targeted at trans women. We're talking about her today because she has swerved out of her lane where she talks about trans women and Israel and stuff. She has swerved out of her lane into issues that have nothing to do with her. And that is the issue of like how we talk about pregnant individuals on the policy level and on like the health scale level. So here we go. We're talking about pregnant people, menstruating people, all this stuff again. Thank you, Brianna. Appreciate it. So she posted saying, as a transgender woman, I am appalled by the efforts to turn abortion from a women's issue to a pregnant person's issue. Like, okay, as a transgender woman, mind your business. Mind your business. This has nothing to do with you. Thank you. Appreciate it. No. Stop. Wait. Don't. I don't care if some rando trans man decides to get pregnant. Abortion is a women's issue. Also, I think that she distinguishes women. I think that she refers to like cis women as just women, and then trans women are trans women, because it's not an issue for all women, because women like Brianna can't get pregnant, and so it has nothing to do with her. Again, she continues, it is the height of narcissism. She cannot spell the word narcissism, presumably on a device that has autocorrect on it, to attempt to rewrite language to make trans people the center of it. Not everything is about us, and if we have any interest in keeping cis women as allies, we will shut the hell up and stop this insanity. Which, question, Brianna, when are you going to take all of this shut the hell up advice that you constantly are dispensing? Interested minds would like to know. So there are a couple issues with this. Like, I don't care if some rando trans man decides to get pregnant. Like, first of all, trans men get pregnant pretty often. It's probably not like, like 100%. And it might not even be 50%, but plenty of trans men get pregnant before they start hormones. Maybe when they're still relatively early in the process of realizing that they're trans. There are like trans men who had babies before they realized that they were trans. And then there's the more common idea of like a trans man who has transitioned a little bit and, you know, has had top surgery. So like the image of like a flat-chested person with a big pregnant belly. You know, we've seen that before. We've discussed it on this channel before. And going like, yeah, abortion is a women's issue. Okay, so I can acknowledge that typically when Republicans, for example, are coming after the right to abortion, they are thinking of it probably in terms of we want to restrict women's mobility in society, and that like they are primarily targeting women by doing so. But it is not exclusively a women's issue, which is kind of the problem. This is what we've discussed before, the whole Anna Kasparian thing, J.K. Rowling complaining about the term menstruating people, is that it's not exclusively a women's issue. There are other people who are impacted by it, and just because they are not the primary political target does not mean that it is a women's issue. Like, that is an incorrect framing. It creates this situation where anyone who has gotten pregnant is considered a woman, and anyone who can't get pregnant feels like less of a woman, whether you're a trans woman or whether you are a cis female who is just infertile. You know, maybe you had to have an emergency hysterectomy because of cancer or something, you know. It is an issue where cisgender women are also negatively impacted by calling this a women's issue, because it's like, oh, well, am I not in the group anymore? So saying pregnant person, you know, saying it's the height of narcissism to attempt to rewrite language to make trans people the center of it. Trans people are not the center. If you say a pregnant person, it's like to make trans people the center of it, it would be to say, no, this is a trans man's issue. Framing it as a women's issue puts women at the center and marginalizes trans men and other trans people who can get pregnant and intersex people who can get pregnant and all of this. Hi, we would like you to hit like and subscribe and check out the links in the description so that you can donate to the GoFundMe or the Patreon, and check out the links for merchandise. Check out this cute hoodie I'm wearing. OMG. Do it for the kitty. He's such a good boy. Brianna does not seem to have a concept of the gravity of the situation either. This is something that we've discussed before, that like medical neglect is it's a prevalent issue for lots of people in the medical community. Basically, if you're not like a cis white man, you're not going to have your medical stuff taken very seriously. You know, we know that women sometimes will be reporting issues for years that their doctors are brushing off as anxiety. Oh, you just need to lose weight, that kind of stuff. And it turns out that there's some serious issue, you know, but there is like a very specific problem of medical neglect for trans men and other trans people who can get pregnant when we call this a women's issue. Because, and I don't even have to claim like an esoteric kind of vaguely this might harm people. No, we have data. Like, not only do trans people in general avoid getting medical care because of the potential of being misgendered, but trans men avoid seeking gynecological care because of the potential of like not only being misgendered, but also potentially being harassed. Like, why are you in this women's office? And then we have cases like Robert Eads, EADS, if you want to look him up, Robert Eads. He died of metastatic ovarian cancer because he was declined care by like half a dozen different gynecological doctors. Like, he had cancer. He had been diagnosed with cancer, knew he had cancer, was seeking care for it. And this, the Wikipedia claims more than 20 doctors refused to medically treat him on the grounds that taking him on as a patient might harm their practice. He was finally accepted for treatment in 97 after having been diagnosed in 96, but the cancer had already metastasized to other parts of the body, rendering any further treatments futile. So people die when you treat abortion and gynecological health care as women-only issues. You know, I'm not evoking, like, I'm not like, oh, it hurts to be called a woman when I'm trying to seek this care. Oh, it hurts that this is like it's a women's issue or a female issue. It's not about that. It's about being medically accurate and about making sure that people who need this care are able to seek it. Because the doctors themselves form a bias that only women need this care. And sometimes it is explicitly transphobic where they're like, well, maybe this will teach you a lesson, you know? Like, maybe you should learn that you're not a man, you're actually a woman. So for Brianna, who is not able to get pregnant, she is not part of it. She is not a cis woman. She is not a trans person capable of getting pregnant. Like, she has no stake in this, but she is perpetuating basically transandrophobia is one of the terms that we use to discuss this issue. Like, transphobia against trans men, telling them that we need to shut up. That like that I as a trans person, like that I as a trans person who can get pregnant, or that any trans man who can get pregnant needs to shut up about our access to this care and like the potential harm that this does. Much like trans people avoid going to the bathroom in public. Okay, so here's this thing. Trans people avoid going to the bathroom in public, which means we have a greater instance of urinary tract infections and bladder infections than the general population. And then also, we are less likely to seek medical care because of concern about being misgendered, and in particular, out of concern of how we're going to be treated if it impacts our reproductive or genital areas in our bodies. This is a like double whammy combo that hits trans men harder than it hits other groups potentially. So, I mean, she's wrong about a lot of things a lot of the time. It's just rarely does she swing wildly out of her lane to come at me, basically, not directly me, but people like me, and to say that, like, we need to shut up and stop this insanity. Like the insanity of wanting trans men to feel comfortable going to the gyno so that they can seek preventative cancer care, so that they can seek abortion care, so that they can seek birth control. Imagine if the doctors themselves could expand their view of their practice. Because here's the thing too, yeah, like not like it's not just that trans men can't seek the care. It's also that when they seek the care, the doctors don't know how to treat us. Like that doctors don't know whether birth control is recommended while you're on testosterone. It is. Testosterone is not a birth control. People get pregnant while taking testosterone. And like, how much research is there in whether you should take combination birth control with estrogen in it? Like, is a doctor just going to try to throw combination birth control pills at you? Well, that might give you some feminizing effects that you don't want while you're in the middle of testosterone treatment. Like, for doctors to be able to give informed, compassionate care to trans men, they have to view their practice as being not exclusively directed at women, with the expectation that, like, yeah, feminine looking people are going to come in here and they're going to need like very standard female care. Again, I'm not saying that the standard of care for typical female care is great either. There are plenty of times where cis women are bleeding heavily or having issues like bloating or weight gain or whatever. They get brushed off and then it turns out that it was something more serious, you know? But it's worse when you layer this on. Like, not only are you going to be dealing with the normal marginalization that women experience in the medical field, but also you're going to have doctors refuse to give you care because you are not a woman. And that's why it's important to approach this as a neutral thing. Like, yeah, a pregnant person needs pregnancy-related care. A pregnant person needs abortion. Not every woman needs abortion. Not every woman can get pregnant. Not every woman is pregnant at a given time. It's only pregnant people who need access to abortion. Just like menstruating person or like a person who menstruates. People who don't menstruate don't need pads and tampons. It's just about who like actually materially needs access. People who don't have a cervix don't need pap smears, really. You get a pap smear to detect cervical cancer. If you don't have a cervix, you don't need one. So it's like, who needs pap smears? People with cervixes. Not all women have one, whether they were born without one or whether they had it removed. And there are plenty of people who aren't women who do have a cervix and therefore need pap smears. It's just about being medically accurate in a way that enables everybody to seek the care who needs it. Yeah, like there are so many barriers to break through anyway. Like, yeah, for example, if you're seeking out a hysterectomy and then also dealing with the transphobia on top of it, not only are you going to get the whole, oh, are you sure you're not going to meet a man someday who wants to get you pregnant? But also it's like, well, as a transgender, this you have to now go to a psychologist to get assessed or I won't give you this surgery. I'm curious, how much has Brianna Wu talked about abortion before? Yeah, that's a great question. Like, is she an abortion advocate? Does she regularly talk about how important abortion access is for cis women, much less for trans men? Or is she only bringing this up to try to exercise power over other people in her community? And finally, like, it is worth pointing out too that it's not like we're trying to strip women of their label of women. You know, if you're a pregnant woman and you're going in for gynecological care or you're going in for abortion or whatever, the doctor is still going to refer to you as a woman. Most likely. Is like, no one's taking this from you. We're not trying to say on an individual level, if you're admitted to the obstetric wing of the hospital, you know, you're personally going to be called a pregnant person and not a woman. This is about policy. This is about how we describe like the medical field in general. Pregnant people need access to abortion. Pregnant people have the right to autonomy over their bodies in choosing whether to continue a pregnancy, right? You as an individual are still a woman, and that's fine. Like, obviously, Brianna can't get pregnant. I'm just saying, like, a hypothetical cis woman still gets to be a woman. No one is trying to take that away. If anything, we're just trying to avoid having, like, trans men be called women, like, not only by virtue of being associated with the need for women's care, quote unquote, but also, like, yeah, again, that association does cause trans men to be misgendered actively, which is an additional stress during a time where you're already stressed. If you're seeking an abortion, babe, you're already stressed. If you're about to give birth, babe, you're already stressed. You don't need to add on to it, having to fight with your doctors to be like, dude, I have a beard. I'm a man. Please stop calling me mom. Like, oh, how's mom doing? I don't know. There isn't one in this room right now, actually. You know, Jesus Christ. Imagine trying to provide like competent and accurate medical care. People like Brianna Wu and Anna Kasparian are why public speakers, influencers, whatever, at a notable scale should be legally bound to disclose their income and the source of the payments. Honestly, like, who's paying you to do this? You know, she's got that little tick right there, which means that Twitter is paying her for these awful takes. Also, this whole thing is born out of the dumb idea that trans issues are losing issues for progressives, assuming there's any thought behind Wu. Yeah, I think that this is kind of where Anna Kasparian and Cenk were talking from the Young Turks network, basically trying to treat trans issues like, oh, this is a losing issue. Stop trying to stand by the term birthing people. Stop trying to stand by having trans women in sports. Like, yeah, trans issues famously good for Republicans in elections, except for every time they've tried to run on them in the past few years. But however, it's really important to throw trans people under the bus to win. Right. Like, campaigning against trans people has caused a lot of Republicans to lose their elections. It's not a winning issue for them. So why would being pro-trans be a losing issue? You know, when obviously it's not popular to be anti-trans, at least among like Republican voters. They seem pretty annoyed about it, actually. But yeah, it does seem like this is like, oh, stop trying to advocate for trans people. It's such a losing issue. We need to stop. Cis women won't be our allies if we don't stop. Any cis woman who takes issue with including trans men in these discussions, like, they're not progressives anyway. They're about like one step away from just being gender criticals. Trans men deserve to be included in these conversations. Trans people who can get pregnant deserve to be included in these conversations. And Brianna Wu doesn't have a stake in this. So why is she talking about this except to just basically declare herself the police of trans people and what we're allowed to talk about? Anyway, it just was a good opportunity to talk about some of these things that we've talked about before on the channel, but it's good to touch base again and, talk about that, after the fall of Roe v. Wade, trans men are also sitting here having to fly across state borders to get healthcare and are limited to clinics that are pro-trans, and there aren't that many. Like, if they want competent care, we have fewer options. Fewer options than even cis women, who have fewer options now than they did this time last year. So it's just not right. It ain't right. Thank you to the patrons, especially Bo E, Hapax Legomenon Patient Advocate, Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvag, Sarah A, Jack, Amanda B, Michelle Frateroli, Michelle Winter, Wellington Marcus, Danielle McDonald, Suzanne Maynard, DZXN, Jamie Jam, Nova, Sojo, Pasnell Infinity, Elizabeth Bartell, Jericho, Athiet, Desi Quiche, Celeste, Mr. Atheist, Liam Hodgson, Kevin Young, and Ella V. Nobody.